Welcome to the Coaching Family Soccer Coaching Podcast, a podcast for soccer coaches from grassroots to the pro game. Soccer coaches who love the game, love coaching, and want to get better. Join our community on Twitter @CoachingFamily.
So guys, welcome back to another Coaching Family Soccer Coaching Podcast, the podcast for soccer coaches all around the world of all levels who want to improve. Joined by my special guest as ever, my good friend Glen Hicks. Glen, how are you doing, pal?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Feeling good.
Today's we're talking about winning v development. So, a topical one. What's your first thoughts on that?
I think there's some misunderstood words in there when it comes to youth development. I chucked the word success in there and competition as well, because people obsess about winning, don't they, so at all levels, and we're all winners and we all watch the television and just love seeing people win, and especially our teams and stuff. But I would say the important words are winning, success, competition, development, learning, and then you have to prioritize. But actually first, before you do that, especially when you're working with young people, is work out exactly what it looks like. So what is winning to a 9-year-old? Is it winning all the titles in London or your county and being lauded as the best player in the country, or is winning having some of them same 9-year-olds go on a long journey and go and have a really, really long career in football? And what I mean by a long career in football, I don't just mean being a Premier League footballer, because there's an obsession with that as well. I mean, are they still playing at 25, 26, 27? Yeah, hopefully earning a bit of money from the game, which is a privilege, but even just maximising the joy of football, because there's a lot of people that quit along the way because they become disillusioned with football. So that would be the starting point, is what do them words mean to us as coaches, first and foremost?
Yeah, I mean, this is slightly topical, I say, because we had this debate. I had a debate on Twitter recently, and obviously we talked about you and Ross on the defending one briefly about, and it always comes back to me about, we talk about winning v development, particularly in academy football and any sort of football really, but it's that, it's how much do you want to win? And we had this conversation about, playing long ball football. So, category 1 team, playing other category 1, 2, and 2 massive clubs, one playing very direct, and staying direct is basically the goalie's just basically shelling it every time, and one team trying to play out every time. And obviously, and I was quite surprised actually on Twitter, a lot of people come back and say, oh yeah, it should be 50-50. There's a place for this, place for that. And I still can't get my head around that in terms of what development are you getting out of the players when you play long? As people said, oh yeah, but that's good for our players, because yes, fair enough, it might be good for our players, but the coach who's playing that is surely driven just to win that game. Do you know what I mean? What development are you getting out? Sure, maybe the striker's getting some stuff, winning headers, second balls, blah, blah, blah. But that really, talk about winning and development, that's an ego thing for me. Do you know what I mean? I'm still trying to get my head around in terms of, from a development perspective, why would you, with 11, 12-year-olds, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds play long ball football consistently throughout a game if it wasn't just to win? Do you know what I mean? And then who's that for? Do you know what I mean? Who's that for? And then to give it to context, it's different. Like, I'm not talking about, a massive team playing a smaller team, fair enough. You talk about, maybe trying to play a different way to just try and compete. But if you're a massive club, surely you're about development. Why would you ever play long ball football consistently for a whole game, or even a couple of games? Do you know what I mean? Well, surely that is about winning over development. That is about the coach ego, about it. Surely you should be good enough to try and play the right way. And I say the right way, and fair enough, people might batter me for that. Yeah, I've got no qualms about it. I'm in youth development. I'm an idealist. That's what we do. I remember, my first starting off in my academy career, when I started at Tottenham and taking games in the under-9s and playing big teams, talking about big teams there, well, they did just smash it, get it in the mixer and crash bang roll it. And that is why English football has been so poor for so many generations, so many decades, because we didn't develop players to play the right way, take the ball out, receive under pressure. It was just stick it in the mixer, shell it. It's like hot potato, that sort of thing. So we've come a long way. So I was just like, I can't get my head around that. The excuses, why would you try and qualify the other way of doing it?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, mate. And in its rawest form, it is quite easy to figure out as well. Like, if you have strong values and convictions, and I probably didn't get it as right the first 5 years or so when I was taking junior grassroots teams, especially myself. I definitely did 90% of the time. I had the right intentions, but we're all affected by pressure, and getting to a cup final on a grassroots team affects people, and sometimes your values go astray. But you can consistently say, if you stand for something, you stand for it. And that means, so if we're asking our players to be pressure proof, can you take the ball in a phone box and, Cruyff out and this, that? Well, if that's going to involve a lot of mistakes. We have to be the same pressure proof or pressure resistant coaches. And sometimes it can be a lonely place when you've got a bunch of parents screaming on the side or come and question you after a game of football. Well, we keep losing. Okay, so that's one part of the game. But let me tell you this, your son, Joey, did you see how many times he tried to kick the ball with his left foot today? And mum or dad or whatever might say, oh, yeah, but he fell over. We can concede a goal. Yeah, I know he did. But that's part of the process he has to go through. If we're trying to learn, if we're trying to develop, it's going to look uncomfortable at times. There's going to be sticky periods. But again, it depends what our objectives are. One thing I would say about direct game, like, again, stripping it back to its rawest form, is it's really not difficult to work out, especially when you're on big pitches and everything's oversized, including the players. The bigger the pitch and the bigger the goals, well, actually, the more, if you stick that big physical player at the back end of the pitch, and this is driven by fear, in my opinion, not learning. If you stick that big, strong boy that can kick the ball the furthest at the back and can actually stop people getting past him at the back, and then the big, strong one up the front, you're going to score goals. You're going to stop goals at one end and you're going to score goals at the other end, because the big physically dominant player that can kick the ball and then the one at the front that can run is going to overpower. And I would say, challenge this to the coaches, how many goals in that context are scored through real, deliberate, intentional, controlled football? I call it like picking your play, with purpose, intent, and control. So if it is a long pass, what we don't want to do is discourage that. So if a kid looks up and does a Toby Alderweireld style pass and they score, and the centre forward takes a fantastic first touch and runs through on goal, and it's an exceptional finish, you don't want to discourage that. But we know what poor football looks like. That's painful to watch as youth developers. Do you know what I mean? That one that literally is just a hopeless boot up the pitch. The kid runs onto it, scores a goal. There's loads of mistakes in there as well. For every time you kick a ball over 7 other children's head, ask yourself this: for the kid that kicked it and the kid that ran onto it, what are all the other children missing out on? What stuff are they missing out on that is gold dust and so essential for them to become better footballers? And I think if you dig deep with that question, what are they missing out on? Because you'll come up with a lot of stuff, including enjoyment, by the way, because I know the parents might go, yeah, they enjoyed winning. No, they're going along with a ride. If you ask them, did you touch the ball enough today? Did you enjoy playing and expressing yourself today? They'll go, no, you're joking. I touched the ball twice today. So, do you know what I mean? I think a lot of it comes back to values, doesn't it? So values and convictions. And why do you do really what you do? And what? Yeah,
I mean, there's a couple of things there, because obviously, like say, if you are, grassroots football, and maybe, you do want to win, it is a winning cost or mentality. That's fair enough. I suppose, you legitimize that, don't you? I can't get my head around that one when you're in academy football and you're doing that, and it's, you're playing friendlies every week. The result literally doesn't mean anything, and you're still doing it. And I'm just thinking, how do you qualify that? Do you know what I mean? If you're in inverted commas big club or any sort of club, and listen, it's different. Say you're a smaller club and you say, okay, we're trying to produce players for our first team. Maybe you're in the lower leagues and your first team plays that football. Say fair enough. If you're a big club, how do you qualify that? And then, so if I'm a parent watching that game thinking, well, what's going, my son plays midfield and he's getting neck ache because he's looking at the ball in the air. And that's true. And it is important to qualify, some play, Liverpool quite direct. They play quick, they play early, but it's long passes. It's, it's not just get the ball and just stick it in the channels or in the mixer. There's a difference about that. So, yeah, I mean, that's just, it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's just like say, what's your values as a club, as a coach, and what you're trying to get out of it. What about, I mean, I suppose like the broader thing. I mean, I think, winning can sometimes though be like a dirty word. You don't want to, create an environment where, you don't have competition. You don't have, winning is not a thing. You want the boys to be competitive, and the boys are all the girls naturally they're always going to win, aren't they? They're always going to win. And when you have conversations with coaches, particularly from abroad in the continent, they say, yeah, look, we always want to win, but it's about winning the right way, isn't it? Or winning, not compromising your development ideals, which is playing the modern, just call it the modern game of football, because England used to be in the dark ages only very few years ago, very direct. So trying to play that modern game, and it might be more of a challenge. It takes a bit longer, but it's a bit harder. But then it's the fruits of your labour down the road, isn't it? When you reach the end of that rainbow and you've got that pot of gold and you've got a player who's comfortable in possession and can play out from the back, and that's what I mean. Exactly. That's
really looking forward to the
thing.
playing the World Cup. How exciting is it thinking, wow, Phil Foden again has just won the Young Player of the Year, and he happens to have a British or an English passport. He's English, and I know we can't always produce tons of Phil Fodens, but we definitely can produce more. 100%, I've got no doubt about it. When you look culturally, how many of the £100 million footballers or the Ballon d'Or winners have come from certain countries, like South American countries, where there is more of a demand on playing football a certain way. It was fascinating to listen to Steve McLaren in an interview recently, Saul, as well, about, you talk about someone who's an exceptional British or English coach, exceptional, got an incredible CV, part of the Manchester United treble winning team in terms of performance and stuff. But he said that when he went out to Holland, even at the top level, because I still believe there's a misconception about top level, Saul, when we see the best operators at the top level, I would really love for coaches to look more, not just at the lifting of the trophies, but the constant talk about winning, but learning, development. I hear Tuchel talking all the time, Pep Guardiola himself, about learning. Oh, my first season at Manchester City, I learned the most. This one's developing this. There's still at the top level constant learning. Like Wenger was the ultimate teacher, and he was at the top level. We see him at the top level. Do you know what I mean? In terms of constantly developing people's games. So I actually think there's a misconception at the top end, because people go, "Oh yeah, well, we play long football because that's the level of football that he's going into." Well, it doesn't have to be, and it isn't always actually. And because of the improvement of the level of the pitches at League One, League Two now, they're fantastic football pitches. Now, I took a group of boys to play at Northampton Town on their pitch just the other day, and I think some of them excuses are going now, thanks to technology and science. The standard of pitches are better. So, and I think they are just excuses. But I agree with you about the whole. Steve McLaren, by the way, said when he went to Holland, they apparently lost their first game, Saul, but they was getting applauded, and the newspapers were saying it's a brilliant performance. But Steve McLaren said that he couldn't understand it as much. We didn't win, it's all about winning in England. But he learned then, they were satisfied. No, look at the stats. You've got 65% possession. Your intent was good. You've done well. And, we went on to do a miraculous thing that season. I think Eric Ten Hag was his assistant. They went on to win the league. And again, it's stuff that hasn't been done. But it wasn't at the compromise of the development or the core values about the style and the way they wanted to play football. But winning is not a dirty word as well, though. But we need to know how to use that word and how much importance we put on that word and how we talk about that word with children. Do you know what I mean? It's just a consequence of what you're doing anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's right, isn't it? I mean, it's about balance. Isn't it? I remember as well, I was on an MIA license, and having conversation in one of the seminars, and a couple of coaches said, I want to win. Doesn't matter what age group, in nines, I want to win. I want to set up to win. I goes, well, then that's fair enough. That's not a neutral decision. That has implications. So for example, maybe your wide player is not taking as many risks on the ball. Maybe he's playing more percentages. Maybe he's going back and recycling it more. Maybe you don't want to lose possession as much, and maybe your players aren't trying to break lines in your own defensive third, that sort of thing, because you want to win. And that's the problem, isn't it? It's saying, we want to win. Yeah, we want to. If I said, I want to win, and I'm going to set my team out to win, that's fair enough. But then that comes with, compromises, which are going to affect the players and the development of the players. So yeah, we want to win, but I'd rather have little Billy or little Lena, whatever, just dribbling out and taking a few risks, as a fullback, trying to beat defenders 1v1, or as a centre back, trying to drive out, or I don't mind my players doing Maradonas on the edge of their own box if it's trying to get out of trouble. Do you know what I mean? I remember the very early days at Tottenham, one player centre that player, did a Maradona edge of the box, and then lost the ball. So, good effort, good. Because someone said, he's done a Maradona on the belt. So I said, well, how courageous is that? How brave is that? To do that? I don't mind. That didn't work this time, but maybe next time it does. And if you don't let players do that at 9, then you've got no chance of them, being brave enough to do it at 12, 16 and 18 or in the first team. Do you know what I mean?
It's so rewarding as well, isn't it, mate? So I would say this as well. What is success to you? And my opinion on success is the more challenging the journey a young player has had to go through, or any of us really, so if 3 people lift the European Champions League one day, or like Leicester is incredible success because it's where they've come from to where they got, that for me determines success more. Do you know what I mean? If you're born with a silver spoon and you've always got money and you end up with money, if you're born, the whole rags to riches thing. So for me, going through that process is even more rewarding. So when you see them kids struggle, so you know what it's like I've been guilty on the sidelines before now, celebrating things where the parents are looking at me like, oh, why is he celebrating that? Do you know what I mean? But like I'm crazy, like I'm some kind of nutty guy on the side of the pitch. But I'm celebrating a little hurdle that kid's got over, or I'll over celebrate some goals, and people will go, "God, he really wants to win." No. You don't know the conversation I'm about to have with this kid. You know that kid that scores with his left foot for the first time. It could be the most horrible goal. I remember one moment, Saul, where this lad was going on a journey in our academy at Spurs as well, from just total refusal to use his left foot to hit it, used his left foot and kicked the ball once. He made contact. So I was like, brilliant, great progress, great attitude. And I like to get a little bit intentionally, get a little bit louder with that stuff sometimes, so the parents can clearly understand what it is I'm celebrating. Do you know what I mean? And then maybe 3 or 4 games down the line, he scored the most horrible goal. Like it was a really ugly looking goal, miss hit, shanked it, went in the bottom corner. But I celebrated it like it was the best goal of the season. But I knew there was a little euphoric moment there. There was a moment where this kid's going to now hopefully trust the process, trust his left foot. And then maybe 2-3 months down the line, this young lad come into training one day and he hit this left foot shot that I heard it. When ball striking sounds good, Saul, then it's beautiful. Like there's such a sensitivity. It went boom and it just whistled past my head and the coach's head that I was standing with. And I've looked over my shoulder to Moan like, what were you doing kicking the ball near the coaches? And I've seen who it was, right? And I've looked at his body shape, the way he's lined up, and I'm like, did you just hit that with your left foot? And I was like, brilliant. He thought, and again, he froze a bit because he thought I was going to have a go at him because he's nearly kicked the ball at me. But I went, that's superb. Did you just see? I heard and I felt how well you kicked it. He went boom, and he walked off with this cocky swagger, like, yeah, that's my left foot. And for me, like I'm getting a little bit tingle, but for me, that is success because he's now got a left foot on a tool that he's going to take with him his whole journey. But like I say, that same kid that was under 9, Saul, and is now surviving at a top Premier League club at 14 with one of them tools of an additional left foot. It comes back to your values. What is it you really believe in? And on the word talent, Saul, I'm really interested in this word latent, right? It just means exactly the same as potential or possibility. I come across the word, and I've got the thesaurus out because I'm not, I have to learn my words as I go. But this word latent is fascinating. That it's one of the only words that is in there that means exactly the same thing as possibility and potential, but it's got the same letters in it as talent. So it's just talent, but the L and the T are the other way round, the word latent, right? And if you're wondering how you're supposed to coach talent, and by talent, I mean they have an aptitude. They clearly have a possibility to get good at football because, let's be honest, with all the will in the world, you can eat all the salads in the world. We can put them on the best training program in the world, masterful coaches or whatever. If they don't have that potential, they're not going to be that something. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? A bit like me trying to maybe learn the piano with me fat sausage fingers or whatever. But that word latent's interesting, Saul. It's made up of the same letters, but just in a slight wrong way. And all latent means is what is yet undiscovered, what hasn't been seen yet, what is lying dormant that needs to be watered a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like if you go to a dry landscape, well, actually there are the roots of flowers still laying there, and if it started to rain for the next 3 weeks, you would start to see these flowers blossom. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's important, that word. They're pretty much the same thing. We're working with talent, but how much can we bring out that we haven't seen before? Are we looking at possibility and potential? And what part are we playing in that to bring that stuff out? And that ultimately is winning, and that is success, in my opinion. There's no more satisfying thing than when you unearth talent that lots of other people hadn't seen previously. And it's like, oh, wow, where did that come from? And it's so rewarding as a coach.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's right. It's youth football, isn't it? I mean, what's the success is that the players are getting better. Do you know what I mean? Long term, those players are going to be better. If you work in academy football, you're developing, players who make a career living in the game, or are still getting those life experiences. If you grassroots football, the players are improving, they're enjoying themselves, that sort of thing. And that's it's the old adage. I mean, Tim Sherwood used to say it to Rambo. Now, the only 3 points that matters are the ones from the first team on the weekend. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And that's like, it's the reality, isn't it? And that's why, you talk about what is success, is that you might win, you beat this game on Sunday, but it means nothing. It's completely irrelevant. They are literally friendlies, in academy football. You win that game where you might be, bragging, right? So who's the best academy in wherever, or in the country or in your region. But I mean, one academy saying, well, we're about development. The other one saying we want to win. I mean, surely, then you're going to see through that. It's weird, right? But you talk about winning there, because obviously we don't want winning to be a dirty word. And obviously, for me, like every session has got, competition so important. I want my players winning. I want them fighting. I want to breed that competitive cauldron, I call it. It's a great way, so particularly when you work in academy football. Want those live 1v1, those 2v2, 3v3s, and trying to create an environment where they're at it. And I've seen that as well. Luckily when I was working with the 18s at Arsenal last season for several months, is that having that, knowing that, when you add that competitiveness, particularly for the older players, you do see the intensity crank up. Do you know what I mean? So what's your thoughts on that, and how do you try and implement that into your environment to get those latent outcomes?
No, so the word winning is really important, and again, I say it again. If you think back to when we were children, so when we played Wembley with our mates, I think amongst our mates where there was no coaches, it was the most competitive games in my opinion. I remember kicking lumps out of my mates, and my mates going home with them lumps on your shins and bruises, and you think there ain't no coach there telling us to be competitive. There wasn't no coach telling us don't try and win. It's in our nature. We want to win. We want to be competitive, but it's about harnessing that. Do you know what I mean? It's important. It's the whole skill of it, isn't it? When does it go over the edge? So when does it start to become bad behaviour? When do children start behaving in a way that it becomes a win at all costs? When do we start behaving that way as well? Like keeping the kid on the bench till the 78th minute in an 80th minute game because you're 2-1 up, which is just so painful to see. Do you know what I mean? And again, it's just about harnessing it. Again, what are we doing with this stuff? Do we understand what winning looks like? And I think that is ultimately the skill of the coach, isn't it? It's always the word competition, in my opinion, or being competitive, because some of the most successful players that have gone through the whole academy environment, for example, under the rigors and the pressures, they've got something inside them, haven't they? So that fire in their belly, that competitive edge, that stubbornness almost, where it doesn't matter what you say about me. Thanks for telling me that I'm not good enough or rejecting me from this pro club academy. But 5 academies later and 5 rejections later, I'm still going to become a pro footballer because I've got that something about me, right? But so you want to encourage all that special stuff, but they're behavioural things, they're characteristics, they're things that we're encouraging along the journey of learning. Do you know what I mean? The whole score line in terms of winning, it's just so irrelevant, isn't it? Like you said, it's a first team thing. Unless the team's getting battered 7-0, trounced 7-0 sort, and there was an attitude problem, I think you need to then correct the attitude problem. Because if you've got trounced 7-0 because children are not working hard or learning or trying their best, you have to challenge that as well, like an apathy. Do you know what I mean? But
I think that's an important point, isn't it? Because it's the balance, isn't it? Because I remember, Chris Ramsey always, winning doesn't matter. I don't mind losing 7-0 because, we're playing out and we're losing, because they're working on something. But I mean, it's one thing to do that. It's another thing to just, like say, capitulate and give up, isn't it? So it's that balance of saying, right, okay, winning doesn't matter, but not trying, that matters. Do you know what I mean? If you're not running, you're not fighting for your teammates, you're not working hard and you're giving up, that really matters. So that's the difficulty, isn't it? Where do you get that balance? Because do you want to have that winning mentality, inverted commas, then win it all, got win, everything's winning, you celebrate, you bring in, everyone's giving you a pat on the back as a coach, but then, as I say, are you the other side of the scale where, well, winning doesn't matter, we lose 20-0 doesn't matter, lose every day, boom, boom, do you know what I mean? So it's about how, I suppose, where do you have that balance in there, isn't it, to try and remind the players that listen, you've got to be brave, you've got to work hard, fair enough, you're losing, it doesn't matter if you're losing, but as long as you're giving everything, right, and not just giving up.
Yeah, and your goals that you originally set at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the 2 years, however long you're with a group of players, are really important to keep you on track, because winning and losing can sometimes be a distraction. And again, so if football is all about winning, and it's a huge part of it, and it's probably the most celebrated, because I even see on the Twitter sphere, I see loads of things about, wow, under-9s team, brilliant, winning trophies. I see all these things this time of year, and under-9s team celebrating the trophy, and under-14s, 15s, 16s. And it's really, to be honest, it's the only thing that seems celebrated. But what about the other 9 teams in that EGA under-14s league? There's 10 teams in that league, and one team is going to win. What about the other 9 teams? How much talent is in there? And I'd say this at the top end as well, because I think there's a lesson to learn even from the top end. Looking at Liverpool and Brighton, right, as 2 that are in my head at the moment about, because if it was all about winning, Newcastle United fans wouldn't go anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's like 50 years of not winning. If it was all about winning, Roma would have quit trying to win. Like, it's the journey and the process of trying to win. They've just won their first European trophy. Liverpool and Brighton would have sacked their managers, both of them, I'll include Klopp, at a certain period in time if it was all about winning and losing. And what I mean is there was this horrible run that Klopp went on. It was painful to watch. They, like, was it last season when they came fourth and they just got fourth? They went about 12 games. They lost. Van Dijk come out of the team. They lost about 7. They lost 7-2 to Villa. There was just this most horrific explosion. But fortunately, the people above him and around him stayed calm and we're just having the most horrific 2 or 3 month period here. We're going to get it right. And then Liverpool went on this incredible run to even get fourth. They just about scraped fourth last season. And yet the other side of that, the other side of staying calm, they're about to become European champions on Saturday, potentially, right? And Brighton, for me, saw the perfect model when you want to look at development. And I'm not saying youth development, I'm just saying development. If you want to look at a club that is fully developed, there was a little period around about November or December when a lot of people calling for Graham Potter's head. He lost 6 on a bounce. They was calling for his head, get out here. And even the fans were critical. They had drawn 0-0 to someone, against someone. I think it might have been Villa or someone. And in the interview afterwards, he come out and really bravely and courageously said, no, the fans are booing me. He said, the fans are booing me. He said, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm sorry, but they don't know what they're talking about. We've just played absolutely terrific. We've done this, but the only thing that was missing was 1 goal. Because if you're saying if we would have scored 1 goal and won 1-0, everyone goes home satisfied. Well, I'm going home satisfied with 90% of our performance. Now you fast forward from Brighton back then to now. And luckily, I'm really pleased they give him a 5-year contract because they've just had, in 150 years of that football club being in existence or whatever it is, they've just finished as high or with as many points as they've ever done in their history. And they're still producing players like Cucurella that are probably going to be bought for a certain amount or developed for a certain amount and be sold on for a massive amount like Dan Burn was and Ben White. So in terms of a development model and trusting processes and developing, there are examples at the top end of the game as well. Do you know what I mean? And something like 28 out of the last 30 times trophies have been won. They've been by the top 4 or top 6 teams. Do you know what I mean? Winning is really just for maybe 5 or 6 teams in terms of who actually do it. So, and if that's the case, if it's just about winning, then why do all the others participate?
What about Norwich, for example? That's the one, isn't it? Like, kind of going a bit off topic here, but, obviously, lauded by many, what a great program, no plan B, they play football the right way, boom, boom. And then they've come under a lot of criticism recently, haven't they? Because they've gone up, they've gone down, they've gone up, they've gone down, like they're yo-yoing a bit. And then people go asking questions, well, hang on, is that winning that important? Is staying in the league that important? Or are the fans happy they're going up and then down because they've got a stable business model, maybe not spending money, that sort of thing. But then you look at someone who's like Brentford who've come into the league, they've stayed in the league, that sort of thing. Because that's sort of the same thing, isn't it? You're talking about, winning and development. You're trying to develop the club or sustainability, I suppose, isn't it? But then, as a fan, when are you, content with that? Or, fans always want more, don't they? I suppose that's reality. For fans, the grass is always greener, isn't it?
Yeah, and at that top end, you've got a business development model, haven't you, and a football development model, and sometimes the business development model overrides it at the end of the day. If people ain't earning money, it's costing the club money, jobs are going to go, and I really do get it. But I think if you get the balance and the football development is strong, look, the value of a really, really top coach like a Graham Potter or an Eddie Howe, and I'm talking about English coaches because I'm being a bit biased towards it because, like you say, we've been in the doldrums for a long time, and Bobby Robson is my hero, Terry Venables is my hero, Glenn Hoddle circa 1998 is my hero and my idol in terms of looking at role models of English coaches and people that have been daring, and even Roy Hodgson, going across, speaking 5 languages. But, we've got some we can be proud of as well, Eddie Howe, in terms of look at the impact he's had at Newcastle. But again, if you get the football development model right, I think more often than not, the business development takes care of itself. And sometimes, not always, because I haven't, operated with people at that level, at board level and that much, but sometimes maybe the business model blurs the football model and overrides it. And maybe that's what we're seeing at Manchester United. Maybe people that are making executive football decisions are not footballing people enough to really get it right. Do you know what I mean? But taking it back to the grassroots, Saul, again, I know we're talking about the top end there.
No, I think it's best. Let's stick with grassroots.
Yeah.
So
No,
you're right,
was
because it's
to
tangent,
look at that game. Look at that end of the game. Then there's still good coaching going. There's still development models in place. And no one is the finished article. Do you know what I mean? Players are always constantly progressing. You're even hearing Harry Kane, the 200 something goals, still talking about the impact that Conte's had on his development.
And also that myth that you're a small team, you can't try and play football and stay up and be a savage team. You've got to stick it in the mixer and do that one. You're actually, like, say, if you're a good coach, you're Eddie Howe's. I mean, Bournemouth finally did drop out of the league, but I mean, if you've got a good coach, like Rodgers when he was with, Swansea and, those sorts of things, you can, you don't have to shell it. Do you know what I mean? At the highest level, you can play the right way. You can develop the players and try and improve them to become better. And, they're taking that lesson into grassroots, isn't it? It's that, there's always room to improve players and try and play football the modern way, if you like.
Yeah, definitely. And like I say, the outcomes will be more, in my opinion. So like we said right at the beginning about, the more times you kick a ball from one player, from point A to point Z down there, what's the other letters of the alphabet? What's the other bits that we've missed out on? And like I say, you've got the movement thing. You've got, actually, it does take a lot of effort, You've got to run more because you've got to make a 10-yard run or an arm block. So there's lots of movement things going on. Then you've got the awareness stuff, the receiving, we can go on and on. The amount of stuff that you lose, the trade-off is too significant. And like I said about success as well, the more you persevere through this stuff, maybe sometimes stubbornly, and you come out the other side, the success will be greater. Do you know what I mean? The reward of really sticking to your values and coming out the other end with players that are really progressing. And I want to steer away from just talking about getting signed for an academy, because that is not every kid's potential in a grassroots team. Seeing them having a team or a group of players that can lose every week, right? Score wise, and the children have to put up with the parents going, you lost another game, you're 5-0 or whatever, right? Having them children still come to train on a Tuesday and Thursday night with a smile on their face, with utter enthusiasm because you've focused them on their learning. Okay, we go again on Tuesday. We're going to learn this. We're doing our 1v1s. We're doing goal scoring. To have them same children come through your doors of your training ground with the same enthusiasm is very well done to the coaches. You're doing a magnificent job. Please don't resort to the whole, I'm building a new team. You've got to go. I've got to come in, because there's nothing more painful to see this time of year than seeing under 8s teams advertising for players. When I'm looking at them going, what's wrong with them little snotty-nosed kids you got there? You had 15 players last year. Do you know what I mean? So it can't become this constant turnover like a factory, because I think it's so detrimental towards development.
What about talking about going back to actual session design and thinking about having that winning, being competitive, that competitive cauldron, which the term I always go back to. I love that, that just the fire intensity of that real competition that players sends players, into that next level. How do you try and boost that in your sessions? I get a lot of people saying, I do a grassroots session, whether it's girls or boys, and I really struggle to get that competitiveness or the intensity in the session. Because people, that's what I said to me the other day. I watched a session on the coach's pass on My Personal Football Coach. Check it out if you want. But he goes, watch it there. He goes, but you seem to have real good energy and flow of your session. I just said, it's a lot about delivery, but it's about session design as well. And it's just about, getting into the players, but it's also creating those sessions, for example, doing a small sided games to make it competitive. Do you know what I mean? Your 2v2s or your 1v1s, who gets the most points? And remember, even my last job at proper academy job, Chelsea, every single session ended on a small sided game, 4v4, 5v5, times 2, or maybe one team on the outside, and then winner stays on, or ideally 2 games at once. Winner moves up, loser moves down. Just the intensity of who's going to be on the top pitch by the end of the session. Goodness me, they love that. Do you know what I mean? The fire is really, really going. I remember when I was younger as well, I used to use Anson Dorrance. Anson Dorrance, basically one of the America's most winningest cultures. University of North Carolina, I think. But he used to really interesting. He worked in the women's college game, and he used to do a point system. And every single thing in the session was given points. So, so everyone's game related competitive. You do points, you accumulate it, and you put a league table up. And I used to do that actually when I was working grassroots football a lot. So, because, to help raise that. So, you do points at the end of the week. Who's winning? In a month, who's got the most points? And this season, player of the year is, whoever's got the most points. Just little things like that to add, your more competition, that little bit of winning and losing in your session to add that bit of intensity? Do you know what I mean? And what's any sort of things you can do to your session to try and add that, particularly like if you're, it's different in academy football because, if a player's not at it, you're thinking, well, you're going to get him released. Do you know what I mean? Everyone generally is at it. It helps, but I suppose at grassroots, isn't it, where that more participation, how do you try and, create that bit more intensity than in your sessions to get that winning and losing?
Yeah, again, grouping within your groups is really important, and it's so. And so, if, like we said before about the 1v1 duel, if the best player is just steamrolling the weakest player in your group and he's won 10-0, you both players are not getting anything out of that. Again, if you're, and sometimes not cheating, but sometimes overloading a game 6v4, you might put the 4 best players together. The very 4 best in terms of like just the best on the ball. We all know what the best looks like. The best on the ball, the best players. Put them all together because you want them maybe to dribble more and you want them to be overloaded, and give the other team 6 because they probably need a little bit help a bit more and to figure stuff out. And there'll be outcomes in there somewhere. But again, the whole point system that you're giving, the point system and writing it down is great. Whoever gets 25 points at the end of the night is the winner, blah, blah, blah. But then it's about, okay, what are we giving the points for? What stuff are we valuing? Like, is it the player that's working the hardest you're giving a point? Is it the player that attempted the most passes? Might have lost the ball, but who's played the best pass tonight? If you was asking to work on our penetrating passing tonight, who's the player that cut through the most players or cut through the players and penetrated players with the most audacity, like a no-look pass? I don't know. Whatever it is you're looking for in terms of a learning outcome, give points for that stuff. Do you know what I mean? It might just be, so you're working on communication with your group. Who's giving out the most positive praise tonight? Every time one of their teammates does something good, who's saying, great pass, Joey, whatever. And all of a sudden, there's a fight between players to talk more and catch people being good and give positive praise. Do you know what I mean? Whatever it is, that whole point scoring system, as long as you're relating it back to your learning, I'm all for it, mate. And me personally, I don't do that as much, but I do like to deliberately set challenges within the game. When you're on the pitch and you walk around or within a training session, like just to wind them up a little bit as well. Like, set this kind of challenge. Next time you get the ball, take the whole team on. And then his mates are moaning at him being greedy. Pass. But I have to go over to him. Remember what I said? If you take the whole team on, I'm going to give you 5 points. So I'm going to give you 10 bonus points. And we'll talk about the bonus points after. It's like skillfully doing that with each individual player, Paul. So like just pulling stuff out of them and but this getting pulled out of them because you're setting them challenges as you go. You're kind of constantly stoking it up and moving the challenge as the session moves. I like to do that a lot. And sometimes it's hidden from the whole group. It's more individualized. But yeah, that's just one thing I like to do. And I like to cheat a bit as a referee as well. If you want to stoke up emotion, I like to deliberately as a referee sometimes. Do you know what I mean?
There's nothing wrong with a bit of cheating. Nothing wrong with a bit of cheating. But yeah, take your life in your hands sometimes. People go to Pete Tong. What about as a coach though, like that winning as a coach? I mean, I always talk this a lot. When I remember I was God knows when that was on my Advanced Youth Award. When I was at Chelsea, we were having a great conversation about, I said about the difference between, when you're taking the academy games and then when you're going to these competitions and suddenly, all winning is important suddenly. And not only have you just got to then say to the players, well, hang on, been working all year where maybe, we're trying to win the right way, blah, blah, but suddenly, for example, game management. I remember one of the first, having one tournament, you play, Anderlecht, and their game management was just amazing. And because they play so many competitions a year, they play, 20, 30, 40 competitions a year. They play a lot of competitions, whereas we at the time, we'd maybe do 5 or 6 competitions, and it's an under 9s group. And you think, our players just weren't used to that, so they'd be like, that one where, I'll pretend I'm injured, run the clock down, or kick the ball away as it goes out. And not saying you want to encourage that, but it's that game management. Also, as a coach, suddenly it's more, suddenly you're going, I'm in a stadium here, I'm in front of several hundred people, it's a bit more challenging. I've got to make substitutes which are going to impact the game. You feel that stress. Do you know what I mean? It's like anything, it's a learned experience, isn't it? The more you do it, the more equipped you become at that in that environment. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because now I've seen that's what the Premier League and the FA have done really well recently, because there's loads of tournaments, loads of whether it's futsal or loads of power play, whatever it is. There's loads of things now where actually winning is actually important. You go in there to win. You're not going there to just compete. Obviously, you want to do it the right way we talked about, but just the more experiences the players get, because in Europe, most of those leagues do play competitive games on the weekend. They manage to do it. they manage to have a competitive league where they, someone wins at the end of the season, they get championship without everyone sticking in the mixer. But what's your thoughts on that in terms of as a coach as well, getting used to that winning being important and, being in that situation?
And I'm sure success works either way. So the countries that do have leagues, I'm sure they're producing lots of professional footballers and people for their club. And I'm sure in the Premier League in our country, where they've got the futsal staff, they've got the power league stuff, there's loads of different variety of competition. But in terms of the development format as well, because playing futsal is absolutely terrific compared to playing 9-a-side or 11-a-side. There's different outcomes, as we all know, and playing on the power league with the balls where there's no rest time. So in terms of intensity, the games are ferocious because the ball's not going out of play and you can't walk for 10 seconds. You're bouncing off the balls and they're scoring. So there's much more transition play in that as well. But whatever it is, so I think it's about timing. So I would say this, if the utopian of football is, I always think back to, like everybody else, it's trendy, isn't it? But it's actually it just is the best it is. Think back to Pep Guardiola in his first season as a manager in 2008-2009, when he wins 6 trophies and he wins the first treble in La Liga history. If it was all about winning, he retires there and then. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I've clocked football. It's like if Klopp would have done the quadruple this season. It's like, just retire. You've clocked it. Like you've done it. Let's let them build your trophies of you now and whatever else. And if the utopian of youth development was a year later, no, 2010 it was, wasn't it? When the utopian for La Masia or any youth development program is to produce the 3 best footballers in the world. And in 2010, it's the first time in the history of football it happened. We all know when Messi, Xavi, and Iniesta got number 1, 2, and 3 in the Ballon d'Or award, which is for the best individuals, for me, that is utopia for professional football academies, not grassroots. Don't try and think because you ain't producing a Ballon d'Or. Do you know what I mean? So if that's the utopia, you have to ask, how did they get there? And there's stories sort of even down to like under 16s and under 18s of Barcelona teams with the little Messis in there still getting beat or them deliberately playing against teams that are physically over mature and getting beat by like the equivalent of a grassroots team, an under 16s regional team that comes in and beats their under 15s. And it's almost like it's part of the process though. It's like, yeah, good. They gave us a massive physical outcome. They beat us 4-1 today, but wow, did you see the guy Iniesta never lose the ball the whole game? Did you see Xavi complete 99 passes and 95 of them were ridiculously challenging? Or did you see Messi take on 5 players and score the 1 goal? Do you know what I mean? I think if that's the utopia, we have to work backwards from that. So again, if you want winning teams, fine. Over-encourage winning and play a certain way and do the tactical stuff. But if you want players for your first team, or if you want players to still be playing football at 21 and still be playing football at 25 because they love the game first and foremost, then again, it's just about weighing up. It sounds like I'm sitting on the fence again, but there is no, I don't have a magic book. There is no set answers, but it's about trading it off and balancing it. Again, it's something we have to, I would say this, Saul, we do have to keep checking ourselves with this because we all go astray sometimes. We all get caught up in the emotion of wanting to prove ourselves in the academy. Academies do become a little bit like a school, a curriculum, and it's a GCSE factory-based outcome. And, they're not there yet. Well, they're not there yet, but where could they be at 16? If we released them too early at 14, he's not going to get his scholar. So it's the amount of people that get released pre-scholar at 16 is madness, isn't it? And then by 21, a lot of them are not even playing football, but some of them have gone on to prove them people completely wrong and playing at a much higher level than the boys that attain the scholar. Do you know what I mean? So again, it's just about, in terms of development, it's hard. Winning is black and white, isn't it? You either win the game or you don't. Development is different, is grey areas, but sometimes you just have to, again, stick to your values and your principles, and just stick at it and be patient at times with talent or latent talent. Be patient.
Absolutely. On that one, Glenn, thanks very much, mate. It's been top. Appreciate it. See you next week, mate.
Cheers, mate. See you next week.
Welcome to the Coaching Family Soccer Coaching Podcast. A podcast for soccer coaches from grassroots to the pro game. Soccer coaches who love the game, love coaching, and want to get better. Join our community on Twitter @CoachingFamily.